Welcome to Pause to Go, the podcast that's all about making the most of life's transitions from middle school through menopause. I'm your host, Bree Luck, joining you as we embark on a journey of self-discovery and questionable decisions. Get ready for heartfelt conversations, expert insights, and personal stories that'll have you laughing, crying, and saying, "Thank goodness I'm not alone." If you've lost your midlife crisis survival kit, we've got you covered. So join me, won't you? And together we can pause to go. This week, I am delighted to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Julie Artis. Julie is a career and leadership coach. She is a published expert on women's work and work-life family balance. She has 10 years of coaching experience, 15 years of administrative experience, and has been teaching at the university level for more than 25 years. She lives in Chicago. She's also certified as an integrative life coach change worker by the Ethical Coaching Collective. And Julie has an excellent podcast, Her Leading Story, which is a must add to your podcast rotation. On today's episode, Julie and I talk about her midlife experience, but we also talk about something that we haven't discussed very much on the podcast, which is the mid-career experience. So I think that you'll really enjoy what she has to say about the work that she does with people who are in their midlife and mid-career. She is brilliant at supporting women to take courageous steps to go for the promotion, to change jobs, and really to make the salary they deserve. Because she knows that as more and more women step into their own power, we'll not only change our own lives, we will transform the world. I know you're going to love this episode. I also just want to point out, because we decided this after we recorded this episode, we actually recorded this back in the summer. And Julie reached out to me this week and said that she is going to do a promo for us, for Pause to Go listeners. She's doing a 30-minute Voice Your Value call, which will help you get really clear on your professional skills and strengths and help you build confidence in your value and worth and articulate it confidently. It's a great free offer for you if you are in mid-career and would like, a little boost, a little support, a little love from a supportive human who really knows her stuff. And so enjoy this talk about midlife changes and mid-career opportunities with Julie Artis. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
I'm so happy to have you here. We're both coming off of trips. You've just been in France.
Oh, it was glorious. First time back in 20 years, and I can still speak the language. It was very affirming that I hadn't totally lost it, which is related to middle age.
Absolutely. It had been 20 years since you had been there. Do you practice? Or did it just come right back?
No. I mean, some of it did, like the basic conversational stuff did, but then the way that I describe it is more like the pause for brain processing got shorter as I was there for a week. So both in me trying to come up with the right words and also understanding what the person talking to me was saying to me in French. So it was wonderful.
And how long were you there?
I was there a week. I had studied there in college and traveled there a couple times before I had kids. So it's not like it was a new culture to me. And so I really just spent the time like enjoying being back, enjoying eavesdropping in cafes, watching what it's like to live there. And then my daughter had been studying there. So I met up with her, saw where she studied, and then we flew back.
And how old is she?
She just turned 16.
That's a big deal.
So she's now better than me. Yeah. She was gone for a month and she loved it. She had a blast. I think she made a lot of good friends. Her French really improved, seriously. And I think she's confident now that she can, I don't know, do anything.
Oh, what a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah, it was so great. Yeah.
You said she's now better than me. And it like kicked off this whole.
The cascading thoughts.
The first thought was, Bree, she's talking about French. She's better than her in French.
I am talking about French.
But I think about how I often look at my children and just think, oh, they're better than me. I don't always feel that way. I don't always feel that they're better than me, but it is a feeling that I have sometimes. It sounds negative, maybe. I actually don't see that as being self-deprecating. I think I'm pretty awesome, but it is beautiful to see your child grow into a fully realized human.
They're amazing. Yeah. In different ways and different from me at that age too. Really unique people. And that's what's fun. They're not mini me's. In my case, they're not. One of them's more of a mini me, the one who went to France. But they're both unique, very independent, unique people. And it's really fun at this age. I think I'm a much better mom of teens than babies.
I think that we all have an age where we really resonate the most. I think that we can connect with many ages, but it is fun to be like, are you a baby mom or toddler mom or a school age mom or teenage mom or an adult child?
We'll see. I think I could be good at that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Tomorrow, an episode that I recorded with Carol Mishkin airs, and she is talking specifically about how to have conversations, how to unparent your adult children. So how to be an unparent and have a new relationship.
I need that.
I know, me too.
That's awesome.
But it's so great to be talking with you today. And I have so much respect for you as a thinker, as a coach, as a mom, as a friend. And I'm really excited to talk about the work that you're doing with people who identify as women in midlife, mostly, yeah?
Mostly in midlife, broadly defined, right? So maybe late 30s up into their 50s. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so mid-career.
Yes, definitely mid-career.
It's all about the mid.
It's all about the mid.
Before we get into the mid, I'd love to just go back for a second and start with the question that I usually start with for most people on the podcast, which is, how old are you now? And where are you in your menopause journey?
So I just turned 53 in April, and I started perimenopause in my early 40s. And by 50, let's say, at the onset of the pandemic, I was fully in menopause.
So right at the onset of the pandemic.
Yeah. That's just, it had been like, I hadn't had a period for about a year, maybe at that point, which is the sort of definition that they give. It had been really erratic the last several years of my 40s. Then all of a sudden it just stopped. And I don't know, I kind of love it.
Yeah, tell me more.
I just like not having to worry about it. Other than some things I know we're going to talk about, I don't feel like I have a lot of physical symptoms related to it. I've never had a hot flash. I've never, like, the physical pieces of it are not a problem for me, other than probably it's like harder to maintain weight and stuff like that. But I didn't have those sort of severe physical symptoms that I know a lot of women do. And my mom didn't either. So she was kind of like, well, that makes sense to me that you don't either. But yeah, I think it's just, I don't know, there's like a little bit of a freedom in it as a stage.
Mm-hmm. That's so refreshing and exciting to hear, that post-menopause it really sounds liberating in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that you didn't have many perimenopause symptoms, but you had a lot going on in your life at that time.
Yeah. I had a stressful role in my full-time job in my early 40s, and I really developed full-on kind of anxiety, panic attacks, stress manifested as actually pain in my shoulders and my neck. And so I went through this whole journey of getting into therapy, getting a psychiatrist. Like, I did start some meds that really helped me, anti-anxiety, antidepressant meds that really helped. And, and I was doing yoga and I was doing all the things. But in retrospect, I wonder, and I've had that sort of anxiety even all through my 40s. COVID didn't help. I wonder if that was in some sense like exacerbated by perimenopause. I'd had it when I was finishing up my dissertation in late 20s, early 30s, then it lulled. I didn't have it when I was pregnant with my kids. At that point, I didn't have postpartum depression or anything. But it is interesting in retrospect because I think we often underplay the role of female hormones in the kinds of experiences that we're having, obviously, because a lot of the medical research on so many symptoms historically and even into today have been done on male subjects. And that's changing, but it's still, and I think it's because they don't want to complicate, they want to isolate something. So they want to rule out the role of changing hormones. But then we have very little information on women. And then I went through a divorce when I was 47. That was stressful. But yeah, like I do think that there's this role in this intersection between sort of mental health and the hormones that I think can be underplayed a little bit. Right now, I'm going through some like energy issues and I'm anemic, my vitamin D is low, like all the things. So I'm working on that. But I also think that's related to hormones too, right? So it's like, okay.
Sure. It's tricky. How do we know what is situational and what is biological, right? And what is the interplay between those things? It's tricky. And I think that we want so much to find one solution for the thing. Oh, I'm going to take this medication and it's going to solve my problems. Or I'm going to get out of this relationship and it's going to solve my problems. And the truth is, it may help. And then there's more to do and
right.
to keep evaluating and listening to yourself and your body, which it really sounds like you do so well.
Oh, that's hilarious because I really don't think that I do. But I think there's a lag time. I'm working on the lag time. I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. Why am I so tired? And then I got blood work that said I was anemic like last summer. And I half-heartedly took some iron and then I forgot. Like I just forgot. And I was like, God, I'm still so tired. And maybe I need to do a sleep study. And my doctor was like, also, you're anemic. Have you been taking your, I'm like, oh, so it's not something that comes super naturally to me. I think it's something I think I'm still working on it, but I've gotten much better at it
just
over
like
the last several years.
Just like with French, you had a lag time in the beginning and then it gets shorter.
It gets shorter. That's exactly right. But I wanted to go back to what you were saying about, I love this idea of we think that there's one thing that's going to fix it. And I think that's because for so long, we had separated out context versus body, like it was an either or, and that it had to be either this or there's like the mind body dichotomy, the like socialization versus biology dichotomy. And what most of the research is showing us is that they're really much more intertwined than scientists 20, 30, 40 years ago reported, portrayed, or were able to really study just because of we've had so many advances in neuroscience and the ability to study things a little bit more granularly. And the idea that the way that you're feeling is due to one underlying thing just isn't, it's just not true. And which makes it trickier, which makes it harder for doctors to help. There's all these implications from that I think the medical profession is grappling with still.
As we realize more how deeply intertwined all of these things are, you're exactly right. At the same time, in the medical industrial complex, we have doctors who are becoming more and more specialized and siloed. So it's actually creating more issues in getting treatment that that really takes that into account, and to finding practitioners who have a systemic understanding of our bodies, minds, contexts, all the things. It really calls for a lot of self-advocacy and exactly what we're doing here, which is talking about it, so that we can take responsibility. And neither of us are medical professionals.
No.
But you are really an expert at helping people in their careers, helping women in their careers. And that is a big piece. I know that my life completely changed when I shifted careers in my mid 40s. I really, once I moved out of a very stressful situation for me, like it was my stuff. It wasn't even the job so much, it was my stuff. But it gave me the space to really take care of some of those other issues that were exacerbating it, so then I could build back up.
Yeah. That's what happens, right? I don't know, we set out on this path. In some ways, it's analogous to this pill will fix everything, right? But instead, we're talking about society having a path toward happiness and success that we are socialized into. And it varies a little bit, right? Depending on your upbringing and your parents and your social class and all of that, like all of that. But I think let's just be real specific, white middle class women who were born in the 70s and 80s, the world was open and we could do whatever we wanted in a way that the generation before us couldn't. And so a lot of us entered into the workforce and were really good at school, got those jobs, like climbed the ladder, dotted all the I's and T's, kept going up and up and up. And I think many women, now I have dear friends who went up and up and they love it. You know what I mean? Like they've done great. I know others who get to a point in their, like, let's say early 40s where they're like, I look like I'm successful, but I don't really feel like that. But at that point, many women have kids. Like the stakes are higher to make any kind of shift. And so there's all these considerations to take into account. And then there's all these kinds of things like, what's the job market like now? What are my skills? Like, do I really want to change, or do I want to like just do some work on myself and maybe do a lateral move or go for a promotion or something like that? And so a lot of what I do with my clients is to work through a lot of that conditioning, the socialization, and almost the limiting belief that they can't make a change because of their families, because of the money, because of the spouses, because of their education, whatever that is. Because it's always possible to make some kind of change. Even myself, I've been on a full-time faculty position as a sociologist for like almost 25 years now at the same institution. And I have had many careers within that one job, let's say. So I have been a chair of my department. I have been a university administrator. I'm now a college associate dean. I have been an advisor. I've done a lot of different things, which suits me because I kind of like to change things up every few years. But it's possible for anyone to explore shifting something about their work, career, life at any age. And some people have a limiting belief that it's too late.
It's great to hear that. I definitely have that limiting belief sometimes. It's too late. Yeah. I have to work through it. I think there's also something, and I know that you and I touched on this a little bit in our pre-meeting. I think there's also a part of I've done all the things right. I've checked all the boxes. I've been the good girl, right? And what happens when we're not? What happens when we end a relationship because we know that's the right thing to happen? When we do the things that feel that they're going against those expectations. I'm going to leave that in your court.
Yeah. If anybody had the good girl complex, it was me. And it's interesting because it comes in stages. I remember one of my first memories of, I'm not perfect. I can't, my kids aren't perfect, is a moment when my son was younger and we were visiting my parents and we were going out to meet my dad for lunch. And he just refused to come downstairs. And I gave him a warning and said, we're going without you if you're not down here with your shoes on in 5 minutes. He was like 7 or 8 and maybe younger. But I remember I left him there. My mom was there. And so I left him, took my daughter. We got to lunch. And I remember my dad being like, what? He didn't. I was like, he did not come when I asked him to. I gave him multiple warnings. I told him we were leaving him. So we left him. Mom's home with him. And I think my dad was like, oh, it wasn't so much about my dad. It was more me, like the expectations that my kids represented something about me and that their actions reflected on my ability to parent. And if they weren't perfect kids. So that kind of opened it up for me, you know.
As they do.
As they do. Exactly. And then, and then going through a divorce, which was not something that I wanted. That still, I think, is kind of a mind fuck for me. Are we explicit? Is that okay? Yes, of course. Because you got totally kicked off of what?
Because I got kicked off of YouTube for the word vagina.
Ridiculous. So, it's still kind of a mind fuck. Like I still wake up sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, I'm divorced. It's so weird to me in so many ways. And I think in some ways it's because it was a very amicable divorce and we have an amicable post-divorce relationship. But it wasn't working anymore. And I think he got there first. It took me a little bit longer because I was so clung to the idea of no. And then we split, and there are several gifts that have come from that, right? Like the gift of knowing that I can live through something like that, knowing that I can take care of myself and my kids, and knowing that I'm strong enough, like emotionally, to weather that, knowing that I have a lot of support, like my friends, my neighbors, my colleagues at work, like everyone. It was just a really humbling, lovely experience in the pain because you really realize your humanity and how your community can be there for you, right? In a very specific way. So I think it's one of those things where for me, and I think for a lot of women, a lot of the rules that we have are, they're socialized. So we think people are going to think something about us when we do something like go through a divorce or have an unruly child or, I don't know, start a podcast or your own side business. You know what I mean? And what will people think? And it's really I went through a lot of coaching on this, which is that it's really not that other people are going to think something about it. Most people aren't thinking about us at all, right? It's like a blip. It's that we're thinking about it and we're worried about what other people are going to think because we've been socialized to worry about it. As a safety mechanism, quite frankly, as women, we are hyper vigilant about how we're perceived. I mean, at least in our generation, how we're perceived. Should we walk alone at dark at night? All of those things play into that mindset of I need to be small and safe. And so when you break the good girl, you're kind of breaking a little bit of that small and safe. And it's hard for your brain to feel safe doing that. I mean, but it's so crazy. When I first started doing my coaching business a year or so ago, and I sent out a bunch of emails to friends and family asking, first I asked for free clients. Then I just said, here's what I'm coaching on and send people to me. Everyone, some people didn't respond. Everyone was like, oh, this is so great. Sure, I'll pass your name on. And I was like, oh, people just want to support me. What? They're not being she's a professor. Why is she doing this? There was none of that. None. It was all in my head. It was a good lesson. It was a really good lesson. I'm still not quite out from under that one, but I know it's there. And I have some evidence. So, there's always something to work on, Bree.
Every morning I go for a walk. It's a pretty long walk. I do about 5 miles. And because I don't have time to walk and meditate, I do a walking meditation. So one of the things that often comes up for me is that fear of being judged, that feeling of what am I doing? usually a lot of very negative thoughts come out at that time. I'm pretty hard on myself. Similar to what you're saying, right? And so I have two parts that sound pretty similar to where you are. The first thing is to remind myself to get out of other people's heads, that that's none of my business, what they're thinking or what they're doing, or what, that's really none of my business. Unless they are coming to me for advice, it's none of my business.
Yes. Good rule to live by.
Number two, it does go back to those basic fears. So I'm always taking a look and saying, this is anxiety that is only operating at the surface level. Let's get deep below that and figure out what you're really afraid of. And it usually comes down to, I'm afraid of getting cast out, right? I'm afraid of not belonging.
Of not belonging. Yeah.
And you know, I have to really take a good hard look at that and at the privilege that is with that, and do some deep work there. So typically that first 45 minutes is spent doing some deep work in that realm. And it is ongoing. And it does shift, and you reach plateaus and times when you have a little more freedom in your brain, and then a hormone shift happens, or you get sick, or something stressful at work, and you have other anxiety, and then you go back to that fear zone. Sounds like we're kind of in the same place, similar place there.
We're in the same place. We need to talk more, basically. This podcast is a good excuse.
But you are helping other people through these moments in life.
Usually women come to me who are in some way bored, dissatisfied, in a toxic situation at work. Something's going on, but it just doesn't feel right, and they know it. But they feel stuck, right? This is the problem, is that a lot of times, because in mid-career, there's so much responsibility, you've put in so much time at your current position, your mind traps you into a loop of thinking that you need to stay, it'll be okay, just go to work and go through the motions. Like, maybe I'll do that later. Maybe I'll shift something later. You know, the brain wants to keep us safe and belonging, right? That is a primal instinct, is to belong. And so what I have found through a year of coaching women through various kinds of transitions, not just switching jobs, but going for a promotion, or doing lateral moves within their own organization into positions that were a better fit for them, is that what happens for a lot of women is they get frozen and stuck in a overthinking thought loop where it's spiraling and spiraling. They look at LinkedIn and they're like, I don't know, is the grass greener somewhere else? Would I get the same amount of pay? Would I even like it as much? And so then it goes again, then I'll stay. And then it just keeps looping. And what happens is that I think a lot of career coaches, honestly, are I help you with your resume, and I help you with your interviewing. And I do all that too. I help you with your cover letter. I support you with networking. But the problem is that those are all actions, right? And our brain does not want to take action if that action is scary or feels unsafe. So it's conditioned to overthink these things and keep us small and safe. And so the big issue here is not just getting clear on what you want, is not just these things you can look up on the internet about how to write bullet points on your resume. You know what I mean? That's not the value. The value of coaching is having somebody who understands these issues about mindset. And I specifically decided to get trained in a method of change work that is based on neuroscience and new research on how to change neural networks in our brain. And it's just a conversational thing. It's related to neurolinguistic programming, but I think it's better. It's been sort of improved upon by my teacher. Her name is Melissa Tiers. And using those kinds of tools, because you can interrupt like you were saying about negative thoughts, you can interrupt the negative thought and then build new neural pathways by replacing them, right? How do you want to feel instead? You don't even have to go back to, the socialization necessarily, or any kind of trauma or any kind of early, you can.
Better to do that with a therapist. Yeah.
Better, much better to dig in that way. This is more about like, when you got stuck and froze, what was happening? Like, where specifically was that happening? Because that's going to light up that neural network, and then taking them through a conversational process where in a embodied process that like allows them to change that. Also, the reason I love this style of coaching is also very empowering. It empowers clients with tools that they can use themselves when they get triggered, upset, stuck. And then like I'm there to support, because it's come up. Like I have had clients who have looked at their college transcripts and been like, oh my God. And they, freak out and it freezes them. Or I have had clients who have had male colleagues get promoted instead of them. And then it like keeps them stuck about how to navigate in that workplace. So I think it's really powerful and misunderstood, or like not a usual thing for a career coach to like talk about, which is the idea. It's like kind of broadly what in the coaching world you would call mindset, but specifically what I like to do is work on the level of changing those limiting beliefs or those thought patterns, replacing them with something positive. And then there's also things we can do in terms of like deep guided visualization and meditation and meaning making that are also tools that can be used to prepare for interviews, to prepare for high stakes conversations that are super effective as well. So I loved my coach training. I'm loving using it with career coaching, especially because at middle age, we have built up so many thoughts about the way the world works, the way we are in the world. Thinking about making some sort of change, it can really feel overwhelming.
You've talked about so much here, but what would one piece of advice be that you would have for a woman who was going through a mid-career or a midlife career change?
Well, I think it sort of depends on where they're at. So in general, I see clients who are in sort of a couple of different places. Some people are in a position, they know they need to change, but they have no idea what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or they kind of have thought about it, but they're not really sure, and they're stuck in the decision part. So that's where clarity becomes really important. So I have a lot of clarity exercises that I do with clients. How to identify what's meaningful work, what kind of activities on a day-to-day basis, put them into flow. The other kind of people I have are, I want to change to this, and I just want support as I'm doing it. So then the clarity is already there. And then it's about getting into action and using these neuroscience tools to support you as you are like making big, bold moves, taking courageous action. Like one example is I have a client who was networking at a conference, right? It was a conference sponsored by a company who she really wanted a job with. And she had some loose connections with them, and she got invited to introduce people on a big stage 2 days in a row. And she, even though she teaches, is like paralyzed in front of large audiences. And so the thing that I taught her to do here, this is good. This is just like a little scrunchie. And she used a bar of soap from the hotel. So this is like when you got the nerves, like right before, if you just pass an object across your midline like this, again, bar of soap, water bottle.
I'm doing it with you.
Anything.
So for people who can't see, there's an object.
Oh, yes.
It's in my left hand, and you sort of pass it across your body to your other hand. So from left to right and right to left. Do you look at it at the same time?
No. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at it. What it is, usually anxiety is concentrated in one specific part of your brain, right? The MRIs show this. And what somatic or kinesthetic body-based experience does is it activates both the right and left brains. And usually if you do this for like even just 2 or 3 minutes before some sort of high stakes conversation, like you can feel, I can feel like the relaxation coming over my body. It really helps to calm and center me. And so usually when I start working with clients, I give them 2 or 3 different tools like this for them to experiment with what works for them. And actually what happens is your brain starts associating those movements with relaxation.
So you have a Pavlovian effect. Yeah.
Yes. And so you can really calm yourself down. So my client used a piece of soap. You know, she said it really, really helped get her centered and grounded before she spoke.
And now every time she sees a bar of soap in the hotel, she instantly feels calmer.
It relaxes. True.
I love it. What a great, simple tool. I'm definitely going to use that this week.
Yes.
So thank you for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell us about midlife?
I have an awesome boyfriend who is unconditionally supportive of all that I do. And so I think the other thing is, if for anyone I don't do divorce coaching or dating coaching or anything like that, but I also had my own experience trying to figure all that out at midlife. It's not that different than like starting your own business in some ways, because it's just like you just have to keep going on first dates. And I went on many and I hit the jackpot, and I'm so grateful that we've been dating like 3 years now. So have just felt so much support and love from him in such an unconditional way. It really has supported me in a lot of different ways, including in starting this coaching business and putting myself out there and setting up my website. I mean, all of that stuff. He's wonderful.
Yeah. I'm so glad. You found each other.
I know. He's so sweet. We're a good match, really good match.
How can we find you? How can we get in touch with you? How can people who are going through midlife career changes work with Julie?
I would encourage people to check out my website, where I talk about the magic of neuroscience and I offer for career coaching. It's very simple. It's julieartiscoaching.com. I'm sure Bree will put it in her show notes. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Dr. Julie Artis. And I post there some, and then there's like links to how to get on. I'd love to invite anyone to hop on a clarity call with me to explore what they're going through. I learned so much from my clients and so much from talking to people, women who are going through this kind of stage in their career or their life. And so I do free clarity calls, no obligation, just chat with me about what you're going through. And there's a link from my Instagram bio that can set you up with my calendar and everything like that. So I would love to talk to anyone who wants to share what they've been going through and see if some of these tools might be a good fit for them.
What a generous offer. Thank you. And that will be in the show notes. Here are my key takeaways from this conversation with Julie Artis. It is possible for anyone to consider shifting something about their career, relationship, health, or personhood. In short, it's never too late to make a change. Number 2, we often worry about what other people are thinking about us, but most people aren't thinking about us at all. We're socialized to worry about how we are perceived. So when we break the good girl mentality, it kind of messes with our brain. And we can use strategies like Julie presented to work on that. Number 3, dating in midlife is not unlike starting a business. You have to put yourself out there and go on a lot of first dates. If you want to see the video from the pre-performance calming exercise that Julie presents in this podcast, hop on over to Awkward Sage Media on Instagram and see the video snippet from the pod. Here's my call to action for this episode. That's what they call it when I'm trying to get you to do something. I want you to do something, and that is to share your story. So if you would like to share an experience of your midlife delights, agony, or just plain humor, you can leave me a voice memo on my new website, pausetogopodcast.com. There's a tab on the right side of the website that says something like, leave me a voice memo. And you can just record a voice memo for me right there and I'll get it. And if you feel comfortable having me share your voice on the pod, then I can share that with everyone. It's so nice to hear other people's voices. But if you don't feel comfortable having me share your voice, I can just anonymously share your story. It'll be great to have your stories on the Pause to Go podcast. All right, stay curious, y'all. Thank you for listening to the Pause to Go podcast. Special thanks to Codebase Co-working and WTJU Radio for their support. This has been an Awkward Sage production.